Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2021 Annual General Meeting of England Hockey. As with our last AGM held in September last year, and in light of the continuing COVID restrictions, it is felt an electronic virtual meeting is appropriate. Attendance at the September virtual meeting was significantly greater than the normal in-person meetings at Bisham, and so this again was another reason for holding the meeting this way. Before moving into the agenda for the evening, I would like to introduce the panel members and also highlight some housekeeping points. My name is Mike Stoddard and I'm the President of England Hockey. Other panel members include Royston Hogarth, Chairman, Nick Pink, Chief Executive, Rich Beer, Development Director, Kuldeep Kaur, Finance Director, and Graham Royal, IT Manager. A few housekeeping points. All delegates have entered the meeting on mute. As noted in the calling notice, questions have been invited in advance of the meeting. Where relevant, answers have been included in the presentations to be given by various panel members later in the meeting. Questions during the meeting will be received verbally. Delegates wishing to ask a question should, via the webinar app, raise their hand. Graham will then unmute the delegate for the question to be asked. When a question is being asked or answered, please lower your hand until the question has been completed. Voting during the meeting will be conducted electronically. Affiliated member organisation's chair or alternative authorised officer will receive an email from agm@englandhockey.co.uk, including a link giving access to the voting form. This should be received in the next 10 minutes. Please check your inboxes, and if you haven't received it, please check your spam folders. If you still haven't received it by 8 p.m, please email agm@englandhockey.co.uk detailing your organisation and name. The voting form requires details of organisation to be completed before moving on to the section where your votes can be cast. Votes can be cast at any time during the meeting and the form will remain open until 9 p.m. In respect of the 3 resolutions to be put to a vote, it will be helpful if delegates could raise their hands when I ask for a proposer and seconder to put the matter to a vote. Please raise your hand and when instructed, unmute yourself and propose or second the agenda item in question. All votes will be counted and verified by England Hockey, overseen by myself as President. Once confirmed, results will be published on Wednesday the 17th of March. These will be emailed directly to all attendees and member organisations' chairs. They will also be uploaded to the England Hockey website. Moving into the agenda then. Item 1 is to receive apologies for absence. We have received a few, and as is customary, details of those members who have given apologies for absence will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Item 2 is to approve the minutes of the last annual general meeting held on 15th of September 2020. Since those minutes were published in the calling notice, 3 corrections have been received. They will be included in the final version of the minutes. But in the meantime, does anybody have any comments or questions on those minutes? In that case, I declare them a true and accurate record of that meeting. Item 3 is to receive the Director's report and approve the financial statements and Auditor's report. At this point, I would like to hand over to Royston and Nick, who will comment around the Director's report, and also Kuldeep, who will take us through the finances. So, Royston, over to you, please.
Sorry, hopefully you can all hear me. Mike, can you hear me?
I can indeed, yes. Yep.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Mike. Somebody else is controlling the microphone for me, so apologies for that. Firstly, let me just add my own very warm welcome to that which Mike has said to everyone that's joined us this evening. I believe there's over a few hundred of us tonight. I'm not sure exactly how many, but that's fantastic. And as Mike said, I think it's such a better medium for these meetings. So I'd love to be back in Bisham Abbey with you, but I'd much more important for us to get as many of you joining our meetings as possible. So great to have you all here, and I hope you're well. I was only reflecting the other day in another meeting. We are now a year into this terrible C-19 COVID challenge pandemic. I really hope everybody's well, and looking forward to being back on the pitch soon. And Nick and Rich will talk about that as we go. Just wanted to jump into a few things before I talk about hockey and people first. I'd like to start by just saying a few words about Andy Tapley. You've all seen the election of a new member elected non-exec, which is in our AGM this evening, and that's because Andy's standing down. And many of you know Andy. In fact, I don't know anybody in hockey who doesn't know Andy, so I'm not sure if he's with us tonight, but I just want to pay our own particular tribute to him for all the hard work he's put in over the last decade and more. But from the early days, and some of you will know Andy's a Yorkshire lad, but started playing hockey in Lancashire, which is great. But he's from all the different roles he's held in Yorkshire, the RCC and everything else. And certainly over the last 6 years while I've been on the board of England Hockey, he's been an absolute stalwart. So Andy, firstly, just want to say a big thank you to you on behalf of us all, and we look forward to keeping in touch, and best wishes to your family. Secondly, I just want to talk about one of our vice presidents. So also we've had an election today in the last months for a new vice president, and we'll come to that in the agenda as you saw. Liz is standing down, and again, after a fantastic period of service with us in the vice president role. Liz, you'll be horrified tonight. I've been looking through your biography from Brentwood Hockey Club and the time in Essex and the East Region and everything else. And I look forward to seeing you back on the pitch in the coming weeks. But big thanks for everything you've done, especially working with Nick, Rich, and the team on the AGM resolutions and the consultation. But you've been outstanding. So again, our grateful thanks to you. And last but no means least, I think you'll join us briefly this evening. Neville Wrench. Many of you know Neville. He's been chairing the RCC for the last period, certainly since I came onto the board of England Hockey. And Neville, obviously with the changes in our structure, the RCC will step away. But again, I just wanted to thank you personally on behalf of the board for all the work you've done. And again, I look forward to staying in touch with you. So probably enough on people. Back to the field of play. I just want to just talk briefly about the elite end of the game, because a lot is happening. I can't go anywhere at the moment. People want to talk to me about whether the Olympics will happen or not. And truthfully, of course, we know no more than any of us that's in the media today. I'm very lucky that I actually sit on the advisory board of one of the large Japanese sponsors of the Olympics, and they're going all out to try and obviously see the games happen. So Nick and the team, Ed, are very much all working very hard to get our squads, the girls obviously who will be who are currently champions, but also the men, where we hope to see both of them podium in Tokyo should we go ahead. Our view at the moment is we very much hope it will, for obvious reasons. The Olympics is July 25 till August 10. Before that, we have Pro League coming back on the pitch, which is back a couple of years to when we were at the Stoop playing games against New Zealand. And obviously we get the Pro League back in May. I'll let Nick talk about when we hope to be able to get spectators back in the ground, but that's something we're really keen to do when it's possible. But everything's very fluid at the moment, as you know. And then we've got moving GB into England in June. So it's going to be very, very busy on the elite end. Those of you who do know Tokyo in July, it's 35 degrees plus heat and 100% humidity. So it'll be interesting to, we need to work really hard to get our teams acclimatized in a way that will give them the best opportunity. But obviously by the time we next see you, we hope both teams have done well. And you will see there's a little bit of hockey on the TV at the moment, which is great. Again, thanks to Nick and the team. We're playing these unofficial games, but it's just fantastic to be able to watch them back out playing and obviously getting themselves ready. Forgive me a second, I've lost my thread. Just moving forward, the other thing I just want to make you aware, we've got the biennial Congress happening in May. This is the two-year annual FIH event. Nick and I and Mike will be participating in that. some really important things coming forward from the FIH, so we'll keep you informed of that as we go. I was pleased to see those of you have seen Mark Coudron, who's the president of Belgium Hockey, and some of us say he's very much responsible for the renaissance in Belgium hockey, which is superb right now. Mark is bidding to become the new president, so he's going up against Dr. Batra, so that'll be tough. Ines Cooper, who's the president of Ireland, is also put herself forward, which is great. And Eric Kool-Nielsen, who's the president of the Netherlands, some of you will know Eric, is a good friend of ours. He's hoping to stand again. So we'll keep you informed of those things as they go. And I should say, Nick and I are, you may not be aware, but we spend quite a lot of time with Dr. Batra and Thierry and the team. So relationships seem to be very well. Touch briefly on funding. Everybody be aware, obviously, the challenges that COVID's brought the country at this difficult time, and sport obviously sits in the middle of that. I think one of the saving graces for me is that I hope, like anybody else, that getting the whole country active will be something when we get past COVID that will actually play back into all our hands, and certainly we'll be doing our best to do whatever we can to leverage that back into hockey. The comprehensive spending review, we've got a 1-year settlement. Again, Nick, I just want to congratulate you and the team on the submission you put in. Most people won't know that our submission for funding is no longer a 4-year funding cycle. It's actually longer now. We look out as far as 12 years. And obviously how that falls in the Paris cycle in 24 will very much reflect on how and what we can invest in going forward, both at the elite and at the domestic end of the game. But it's a particularly important time for us. We've got great relationships through the sports councils and intergovernment, and we're hoping obviously that will keep us in a good place. But no sport has not been impacted by COVID, not only on the pitch but also on the funding level, and we're very keenly aware of the impacts at a domestic level from what's going on there. That allows me quite nicely just to come to domestic hockey briefly. Nick, Rich and the team have been working hard on the AGM resolution and the workings around that, and I guess the one message I wanted to give this meeting, Mr. President, is that the England Hockey Board is very much focused on all of the outcomes of that resolution and all of the work plans. We understand how critical it is to you as our clubs, and we've got a very fine program of review going around that. So we're very confident in the work that Rich and the team are doing, and obviously he will share that with you in a bit later on this evening. And I guess more importantly than anything else, because we're all here because we love the game of hockey, I think I just so keen to get back on the pitch in the next few weeks. Even me blowing a whistle. So some of you will be not looking forward to seeing me, I know that, but I'm really excited about getting back out there, so that will be great. I want to come to one final thing for me before I hand to Nick, and that's the whole subject of diversity and inclusivity. It's a subject which you can't pick up a paper and not talk about. It's all over social media, and it's something that we're taking very seriously as a sport. And I just wanted to give a perspective from where certainly we are at the moment. We're looking at the data and where we've got to as a sport and where we are. I'm delighted, as I think most of you would be aware, that we're very much really the only one dual gender platform that's out there, sport. We've got slightly more ladies than men. You ladies would be delighted to know, but it won't surprise you at all. Rich will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the latest data I saw. And it's really important that the joy I think we have is we start at sort of early primary school, and now we've got over 80s, which is fantastic. So I think we are, as I say, provide a really wonderful platform to get people back active. So we just need to work hard, think about how we actually do that. One of the things that we want to actually look at is how do we actually engage further into the towns, inner cities and everything else to actually get more and more people playing. Nick and I have had meetings with quite a lot of clubs. There's some fantastic work going on, which some of you will see if you look on social media, the work at Spencer Links, the work at Town Hamlets and these sort of places. And we commend that. And we really just need to try and use those models. My own club up in the Midlands, they do incredibly inclusive things, and I don't think we know enough about all the great work that's going on, but certainly one of the things that Rich and his team will be looking at is how we leverage some of those models and do it on a sustainable way. One of the things that we around our table don't believe in is tokenism any more than you, but we want to make sure that anything we can do to try and get more kids playing from every single background is sustainable. And that for us is about schools. Sadly, I'm not the education secretary. I can't make hockey a part of the national curriculum. My goodness me, we all would, wouldn't we? But actually, our clubs are our bedrock, and we want to work as closely as we can with you to make that work. So a few words from me on diversity and inclusivity. Happy to pick up questions on that, but really great to see you all this evening. Thank you for making time. Nick, I'm going to hand over to you to take the team through a bit of detail. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Royston, and thank you, Mike, and good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us this evening, and it's good to virtually see so many of you again at the AGM. As Mike and Royston both said, we broke records in England as England Hockey in terms of attendance, and again, I think tonight, with so many of you here this evening, we're equaling that, if not beating it again. And that engagement, as Royston talked to, of engaging with hockey clubs, hockey club members, is so vitally important. And virtual AGMs are clearly the way to go in terms of making sure that so many people can participate in this forum. It's only 6 months ago, ironically, that we last spoke at the AGM in mid-September. And you know, if you sort of step back and think back to that period of time, we were so hopeful for the start of the season, which of course we did get, and what a start that was. But what a disrupted and challenging time we've all had over the last 6 months. That hard work, that resilience, that commitment of you all on this call, and for all those volunteers, coaches and umpires and many, many more up and down the country, speaks volumes for our sport, and we're incredibly grateful for all your commitments. We're also a couple of weeks away now from what we hope will be the next return of hockey, and we'll be working through the next steps in the government guidance to kind of get us through those next points. Team at England Hockey have done a fantastic job at turning government guidance into infographics and detailed guidance and running forums, often very much at sort of short notice, especially when we had the tiered restrictions in place just a few months ago. But that balance has been equally brilliantly interpreted by COVID officers, committee members up and down the country, and we are absolutely about to enter that next phase, as I'm sure you're all preparing to do so. Sadly, we are still waiting on some guidance, specifically around travel, around use of changing rooms and clubhouses. But the top line is hockey is going to return from the 29th of March. It'll just be how, and that will be in the detail, which we'll share with you as soon as we get to it. And that's really just waiting for government to be able to inform us on those specific issues, that some of which I've just touched on there. At the last AGM 6 months ago, I reported on the immediate challenges presented in 2020, specifically around the commercial revenue losses through the FIH Hockey Pro League and the ability to generate commercial revenues. I emphasised the point that we would be spending time and effort in addressing this balance and, importantly, also improving our IT and digital capabilities. At the same time, in September, I mentioned that over 2/3 of our workforce are publicly funded, and that we were able to repurpose some of those roles to sit with the delivery of some of our strategic priorities. Staffing wise, we are down 10 full-time equivalents to 75 from a year ago, and 16 team members are currently out of our 75 are currently on part and full-time furlough. This is almost our entire quota of non-publicly funded roles. As an organisation, we've held up pretty well in a very challenging period. Kuldeep, our relatively new FD, certainly wasn't here with in the September AGM. We'll talk to you in a bit more detail around the numbers in a moment. However, our income and expenditure has dropped, as you'll see from our accounts, and we posted a deficit last year. There was a balance to strike here of being able or being prepared to make a deficit, but also recognising the history in hockey and ensuring the AGM through the AGM that the NGB is fit for the long term. All was managed incredibly closely and by working alongside the board, and I'm very grateful to the finance group of the board for keeping us in check, but also working with us so closely over these last few months to reduce the risk and limit the impact in and outside of those reserves. We continue to work closely with the board as we aim for a break-even position at the end of August this year, this financial year. We've received good financial support from both Sport England and UK Sport in the last 12 months. They've maintained and extended our existing grants into a 5th year. Usually and normally, as Royston mentioned, we receive 4-year pots of funding from both Sport England and UK Sport, and the majority of that funds our performance and development activity. After some detailed applications, UK Sport have also supported us with some additional continuity funding. This has given us close to about £500,000 worth of funding to support the losses that we've incurred through COVID. And most importantly, and probably the point I really wanted to come to this evening, was we are immensely grateful to the support from the significant majority of hockey clubs who've contributed their affiliation fees to support the running of the national governing body. I know there are one or two out there unhappy with this, and there are one or two struggling financially, but to have around 95% commitment in this year speaks volumes. So a really deep thank you for this. It goes a long way in helping us to deliver our core responsibilities, some of which I've already outlined and I will continue to outline this evening. But without this, we'd have to cut back on some vital services to the game, such as health and safety and safeguarding. At the last AGM, I outlined our commitment to IT and digital, something I've just referenced a moment ago. And last month has seen the launch of our new England and GB websites. These were fully funded with additional grants from Sport England and took some considerable staff time and effort to develop, populate and publish. In my experience, these projects never ever stop and will continue to evolve in the coming weeks and months. And please do feedback to the team as you navigate your way around those sites. We want to make sure they're as fit for purpose as they possibly can be. The other IT project I just wanted to touch on, and Rich will go into a bit more detail in a moment, is the building of a new competition management system, which is absolutely aligned to those transformational changes 86% of you voted on in September. Rich will talk to this in the agenda later on this evening, but our aim is absolutely to be ready for the September 21 season. And one of my other key messages back in September was that our operational plan and priorities were focused and clearly focused about greater relevance and building even stronger relationships with the membership of England Hockey. The websites and competition management system will go some way to delivering this ambition, but so too will the constant engagement we have seen over the last 12 months. I wanted to just touch on some examples of some of that engagement and start with coaching, where over the last 12 months, the coaching team have facilitated over 5,500 learning hours to coaches across all domains, accessing both informal and formal learning. And we've also seen more female coaches than ever before take part in those sessions. The talent development proposed changes have led to some significant discussions taking place, and many of you on this call have taken part, and we're very grateful to you. At the end of the last year, over 500 people took part in 5 open forums and 16 focus groups with a diverse cross-section of hockey in England, including international and club players, senior players, junior players, parents, umpires, school and county administrators, and coaches at every level of the game, past and present. Equally, all 8 of the new areas were also represented, which was a tremendous opportunity and a great way of engaging over some of the talent changes that I referenced and we've been looking through over the last few months. We also, at the start of the season, saw over 150,000 people sign the COVID participation agreements. We've also had over 2,500 umpires go through education events and workshops, and almost every club in the country has attended a return to play session that's been held regularly, and I mentioned earlier on in this call this evening, and that's through 3 lockdowns and everything that's gone on between in the last 12 months. At the AGM in September, we had over 250 representatives, and we've got very similar this evening. So this is just a snapshot, but I hope goes to show the commitment that we have here and will continue to have in the future, whatever that looks like. And I'm sure we all remain optimistic of that June 21 date that the Prime Minister talked to. And if that is the case, we'll still continue the engagement, both virtual and non-virtual at that point. In October, I attended the inquest into the very sad and tragic death of Luke Hobson. One of the important learnings that really came out of that inquest and the sad passing of Luke has led to the publication of the Playing Safe Hockey Guidance. Sadly, Luke's 2-year anniversary is coming up at the end of this month, and Blue Hearts and Luke's parents are fundraising for the local air ambulance, something we'll promote through our channels. So please do look out for this in the coming days. Health and safety and safeguarding are rightly held as fundamental roles for England hockey, and the growing area of importance will become a continued priority for us into the future. We've also changed our affiliation terms to make sure the injury reporting is now a mandatory requirement for all affiliated clubs. It's absolutely critical that we have a full understanding of injury data and information so we can work with the membership to ensure the safety of all of our players, and that came out loud and clear from the coroner in that inquest that I attended back in October. Equally, a few months ago in October, we commenced a tender process to look at the collective insurances across hockey, including our preferred status for all hockey clubs, counties and others. This process was completed in January, and I'm pleased to welcome Bluefin Sport, who've joined us this evening. They will be announced shortly as our insurance partner, which follows Howdens, who've been our insurance partner for a good number of years now. But we look forward to working with Bluefin over at least the next 3 years. The reason for mentioning it, and I guess the main emphasis of that tender, was to make sure that we provide more insurance cover and more competitive pricing. It's that classic conundrum that any of us, I guess, go to in our own insurances. But as we go through any tender process, being able to make sure that the insurance cover is improved, but also at a better price, was commensurate with our aim. And we believe we've got there, and we'll be communicating that very shortly with you in the coming weeks. Particularly as we know that renewals will be very soon on your list to do when we get hockey back. Just one point that did cause some concern though in that tender process that I just wanted to touch on was that in our research there were a number of clubs without any insurance at all. Our conditions of affiliation will be changing this year to make sure all clubs have insurance. But I'd like to suggest that recommendation starts from now. And if you're sat there this evening without any insurance, I would strongly suggest that any club without insurance in place goes about remedying that situation immediately for the restart of hockey in a couple of weeks' time. And if there's anything we can do to help, please contact your relationship manager or any one of us to help bridge that gap and make sure that you're fit and ready for the season ahead. Royston earlier on talked to the UK sport investment, which was announced in December. This brought to an end an 18-month process led by our performance director, Ed Barney, and the team, who did a brilliant job leading to that announcement back in December. We've been given a figure for 1 year, which will take us through Tokyo, as Royston also mentioned, and we'll start from April 21, and we've been given an indicative number for the next 3 years, and we'll have that indicative figure hopefully confirmed later this year, which will provide us with clarity leading up to Paris and beyond. In January, we announced a new commercial partner in Vitality, primarily focused on an investment into women's hockey, the women's national team and the National League. And it's a really important milestone for the sport to have the recognition of a major brand in Vitality in place. And we continue to work at additional opportunities in a very challenging environment currently. Finally, I just wanted to sort of bring together just some of the, I guess, focus points for the next 6 to 12 months, having focused a little bit in terms of what's happened in the last 6 months since we were together in the AGM. Just wanted to touch on a few core areas that we'll be spending a bit of time on. Royston mentioned the first, which was around equality, diversity and inclusion. And as Royston said, we completely accept that there is absolutely more England hockey and the sport of hockey needs to do. We sent a recent update on the 5th of March, which followed details in September and December of what we're looking to do. You can find all of these on our website. Hopefully you'll find them relatively easily on our new website, and please let us know if that's not the case. But we've also recently sent a survey to all players, which are lined up with the Return to Play survey, and we'll be doing the same to all clubs seeking feedback. As Royston said, that data and insight is so important in terms of shaping what will be the next steps. Sports marketing surveys, who work alongside Sporting Equals and other leading national agencies, will be reviewing this feedback independently and producing a report that we will then use to support the expert panel that we'll be looking to bring together, that will enable us to develop a clear and well put together action plan for the sport. We'll be seeking representatives for this panel in the coming weeks, so please do look out for it if it's something that you'll be interested in being involved in, because we'll be looking for people from within the sport, but also external experts from outside hockey to really support us on the next steps of that journey. It's with all of this information, all of this collective positioning, that will produce that action plan that reflects the feedback of the sport and takes into account all the changes we believe are really important. So that's certainly the first one. The second one relates to the proposed changes in the talent system, which I've just briefly mentioned just a moment ago, largely in consultation and feedback mode. So please continue to provide the feedback to the various channels that have been open around this. And as I referenced earlier, we'll lead to additional feedback and communications in the coming weeks on. Accessing a wider and more diverse talent pool sits absolutely at the heart of those ambitions, and I'm genuinely really quite excited about where the next few weeks and few months on this project goes. Thirdly, the implementation of the resolution, the fairly big piece that 86% of you voted in favour for just a few months ago. I won't speak too much on this, just purely because Rich will cover this in a bit more detail later on this evening. But needless to say, I've mentioned the competition management system, which we'll have ready for September 21. But it's also a fantastic opportunity for many of you on this call, but also many others that won't be on this call, to take part in the new areas and the new structures that are set up. And I do believe this is a great opportunity to widen that pool of talent to come forward in various voluntary roles and other roles that will come through those structures that Rich will talk to in a bit more detail. Fourthly, and Royston touched on this briefly, is the domestic season. The first part really relates to what happens post the 29th of March. And then sort of further down the line will be the domestic season for 21-22, linking in with those changes that we've talked through the AGM last time and Rich will talk to. And I do believe this is going to be an immense collective effort like we've never seen before, with our work around the planning and the management of that new structure, and hopefully leading to a full and completely uninterrupted season from September onwards for this year. And let's hope we get there. International hockey, I won't speak too much to this because Royston's covered the sort of key areas earlier. But as Royston mentioned, we've got the FIH Hockey Pro League starting at home in May. We'll be announcing the steps that we'll be taking around that next week. But we're really excited to welcome international hockey back to UK shores in the next couple of months. We've got England competing in the Europeans in the Netherlands in June, and the postponed Olympic Games in Tokyo, all of which, those three things of Pro League, Europeans and the Olympics, I really hope take place and happen, if nothing else, to get hockey shown again and visible to eyeballs right across the country. I hope this has given you a little bit this evening in terms of an idea of the work that's been ongoing and our immediate focus areas. I could talk to more, but Mike has asked me not to. But all joking apart, please do contact me at any point if there's anything more that you wish to explore, or any one of the team. The relationship managers across the country are always the first good point of call to touch base on. But we will continue to provide regular updates through these next important months, particularly as we start to shape the return of hockey in the coming weeks. In my first year, and this is certainly a sort of reflection I've had in the role, it's been an absolute honour and privilege to experience firsthand the commitment of the England hockey team, as I mentioned earlier. But this absolutely is balanced by the incredible support from clubs, regions, associations, counties, umpires and volunteers up and down the country. And I'm really optimistic that as we return again, we'll be in the very best possible place to hit the ground running and really take advantage of the time and energy that you all put in. So please do pass on our considerable appreciation to the number of people in your teams that enable hockey to take place and make it tick and make it happen. But please do also keep an eye out for those who may need some additional help and support. We can't just assume that this is click and go this time when we hit the green light. The pandemic in this period of the last 12 months has affected us all, and some more than others. So please do take the time to realise that yourselves, importantly, and also for those around you. Thank you for your time this evening. Good luck in the coming weeks. Please do keep in touch, and if there's anything more we can do to help, please do say. But otherwise, I shall pass over to Kuldeep to take us through some of the numbers. Kuldeep, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be with you this evening. I thought I would start with telling you a little bit about me. I joined the organisation in October after 9 years at England Rugby, where my role spanned the specialisms of financial planning, investment decisions and strategy, particularly in the lead-up, delivery and legacy of the 2015 Home Rugby World Cup. More recently, over 2020, across both England Rugby and now as part of my remit at England Hockey, my work has involved financial scenario planning in light of the pandemic and work towards a realignment of organisational strategy. On screen, you have some visuals that are taken directly from our annual report, and they highlight the key items of income and expenditure. I know for everybody, you might not be able to see quite all of the numbers on screen, They are available on our website. The full report is there for you to take a look in more detail. In terms of the main highlights of the organisation's performance in 1920, we're reporting a net deficit of 382k. Much of this, as Nick has already explained, is the impact of the pandemic on the latter part of the season, with the postponement of the FIH Pro League matches, which impacted quite heavily on the ticket income and sponsorship income. But it's also reflective of writing off our Lee Valley investment. This deficit was agreed with the board finance group over the course of 2020, and in conjunction with savings that were targeted and delivered across the organisation. In total, our income fell from 11.3 million to 8.3 million. However, we ended the year with robust cash balances of 2.5 million and reserves of 1.2 million. The proportion of our investment that comes from grant funding was 68% over 1920, and it's as a result of this investment, which was secured over the pandemic, that our deficit is not greater than it is reported at the moment. I also wanted to take this opportunity to say that as part of this year's audit, extensive going concern analysis has been carried out to satisfy the auditors prior to the audit committee approvals. We're now moving on for an opportunity for you to ask questions. So I'm going to ask Isla behind the scenes to move on to the next slide.
Thanks, Royston, Nick and Kuldeep. If anybody has questions on anything to do with either anything Royston said, anything Nick said, or indeed anything that Kuldeep has said, please now raise your hand, and we'd be delighted to answer your questions.
Okay, we have a question from Daniel Metcalf. Daniel, I'll unmute you if you want to unmute yourself, and you should be able to ask the question.
Hi, a question for Nick. When he was speaking about the continued payment of affiliation fees, he said that if these hadn't continued to come in, some areas may have been cut. And I believe one of the areas you said that could be cut was safeguarding. It'd be my opinion that this is a really central area for hockey to focus on, and maybe that was just a little bit of hyperbole from yourself, but was safeguarding ever at risk of being cut? And if so, how's the structure come that way? Because that should be a really core thing that hockey has.
Great, thanks,
Nick?
Daniel. I'm happy to pick that one up, Mike. And it's a good question, and I think the point around affiliation fees that I was making is really about just how important they are to the running of the national governing body, Daniel. And at the moment, we sort of have three tranches of funding. There's the UK Sport funding, which largely covers our performance activity, Sport England, that largely covers our development and talent activity. And then we have other funding, the commercial revenues that we generate, and of course our affiliation fees that make up our third tranche. And it's that third tranche that is not covered by the two other areas in terms of our sort of publicly funded areas, Daniel, that I was referencing. And that will include activities like our health and safety activity, our safeguarding activity, and sort of wider governance work that won't be funded by our public funded areas. So those are the areas that are at risk when we don't receive as much funding in that sort of third category, if you like. So that was the point I was making in terms of the risk that then therefore plays, and just how important that support from hockey clubs up and down the country has been to enable us to get to that point specifically. So thank you for the clarification and the question, and hopefully that provides you with the clarity around kind of where our funding's position and the importance that places in terms of our ability to deliver against those core priorities I mentioned.
Okay, and we have a question from Mags Kite. Mags, if I unmute you, if you want to unmute your end and ask your question, please.
Hi, yeah, it's a question for Kuldeep. I know you haven't been there very long, but the thing that interests me is that obviously there's obviously been a fair amount of work going on the background finances to ensure that England Hockey remains a going concern even with such a big loss. Now, somewhere in the various paperwork, there is a commitment, well, not a commitment, an aim that our that our reserves should be enough to cover 1 year's grant income. And obviously we've just taken, when they were 1.6 million this time last year, they weren't enough to cover that. And now they're down to 1.2 million. And I know you've said that the aim is to have a balanced budget at the end of August so that we won't be losing any more money this year. But is there any plan in place to rebuild those reserves and continue building towards the aim of having the 1 year's grant in reserve? Sorry, that's a bit long-winded.
No, I understand. The medium to long-term goal will remain to rebuild reserves, but I think the reality of this organisation and many other NGBs, particularly those with even bigger spectator events and commercial revenues, is that most organisations have had to look at their reserves position and look at their options, and that's why the going concern analysis carried out internally by us and then validated by auditors has been so such a detailed piece of work, and it spans an 18-month period to make sure that we can cover our costs and we have secured revenues. So there's no risk at the moment that we're not a going concern. We continue to monitor finances really very carefully. We'll need to do that in the short term, like many other organisations, but our medium to long-term plan will start to resume probably after a year's time to start to rebuild those reserves. I don't know if anybody else on the audit committee would like to add anything.
Well, Kuldeep, I as chairman of the audit committee, I can add, as the questioner knows, reserves are a function of surplus or deficit. To me, the more important thing is cash, and we have a very, very close eye on that. Kuldeep has a close eye on it. And to me, cash management is in my view more important than the reserves that are a result from surpluses or deficits. And the audience can rest assured that daily cash monitoring is in place during these difficult times, and conversations with UK Sport and Sport England have that very firmly in mind. Graham, more questions?
No, that seems to be all at the moment. No other hands up at all.
In that case then, can I ask for a proposer that the financial statements and auditors report be approved?
We have James Dudley.
Thank you, James. And a seconder?
Bronwyn Seeger.
Thank you, Bronwyn. So if you haven't already voted, please now vote on that the proposal that the director's report and financial statements and auditors report be approved. Item 4 is to approve the reappointment of Hayes McIntyre as auditors of the company. A relatively straightforward resolution. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question from Paul Watts. Paul, if I take you off mute, if you want to take yourself off mute, if you could state your name and the club or organisation you're associated with as well, please.
I'd like to apologise. Actually, my hand was still left up from the last item. Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, we have one from Jenny Mitchell.
Sorry, I'm going to completely railroad the meeting, but Paul, do you want to ask a question?
No, it was actually just I mistakenly voted online rather than voting on the link.
I just hope it was 4. That's all. Like to Paul.
Oh, it was 4.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, back to the mundane bit of reappointing Hayes McIntyre. If there aren't any questions on that particular item,
I've got one hand up, which is Jenny Mitchell. Jenny, oh no, not anymore.
Okay. Could I have a proposer that Hayes McIntyre be reappointed as auditors of the company?
Oh, okay, and we have Howard Morris.
Thank you, Howard. And a seconder?
We have Nirmal Singh.
Thank you, Nirmal. And so if you haven't already voted, please press the appropriate button now. Item 5 is on the agenda is to announce the result of the postal ballot for the election of a member nominated non-executive director following the retirement of Andy Tapley. In total, there were 13 names on the ballot paper, and in my experience, my 11 years on the board and as president, we'd never ever had as many nominations as that and as much interest. But I would like just to announce the results of the 3 most successful candidates. So Michael Latham received 18 votes. Shul Malik received 50 votes. And the successful candidate Sheila Everett received 90 votes. So many congratulations to Sheila, and I look forward to hopefully meeting her in person in the very near future. So congratulations, Sheila, and thank you to everybody who took the time to put their names forward. Item 6 is to announce the result of the postal ballot for the election of a female vice president following the retirement of Liz Pelling. There were 2 names on the ballot paper, and the result was as follows. Catherine Woolley received 83 votes, and the successful candidate, Dawn Bonner, received 91 votes. Again, many congratulations to Dawn, and I look forward to meeting her in person in the very near future. Item 7 is to approve the changes to the England Hockey Articles of Association. The amended articles were sent out to members with the calling notice on the 23rd of February. Before proceeding to questions and a vote on the new articles, I'd like to ask Rich Beer, Development Director, to give a brief presentation outlining the background and giving context to the changes. So Rich, over to you, please.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, so I'm just going to do a short piece on the governance changes that were voted through at the September 2020 AGM, largely relating to the structure fit for the future proposals that hopefully everybody will have a good degree of familiarity with now. Many people on the call I know who've been very closely involved in those, and I really wanted to start there and say that the support and effort we've had from many volunteers now who've come forward around the country to support the progress that we've made with these changes over the last few months has been completely invaluable, and many of you will be sick of the sight of me probably on Teams and video calls over the last few months, but also we couldn't have made the progress that we've made without the huge support of those volunteers who've been prepared to put their hand up and support these changes that we're making. To summarise the changes, there is an article on the homepage of the England Hockey website. If you're not aware, our new website, right on the top of the front of the homepage, there's an article around the changes and the latest update. including the opportunity to volunteer for one of the new organisations if you want to, and we're really pleased to see a good number of responses to that already, and some really good candidates coming forward with interest to be part of the new structures. So that's really positive to see. A lot of progress has gone in the background. We've established transition groups in each of the 8 areas, and those transition groups have been establishing and starting to form into shadow committees that, subject to the approval of the articles that's coming up in a minute, we'll then be able to formally establish and really kick the changes in properly. Beyond that, there's been an awful lot of work that many of you from clubs will be aware of in areas that are seeing more significant changes, considering and consulting on the adult league structures, gathering feedback from clubs, working through those changes, looking at junior competition structures through the junior competition working groups that we've had going, looking at the officiating structures both locally and nationally. The National Discipline Panel have been looking at the discipline changes, and we've started the early parts of work around masters, which does kick in a bit later in terms of the proposed changes. So a lot of work gone on there, all of which is summarised in that website article that you'll find on our website on the right. From a sub-areas or a county perspective, we've held 2 forums attended by over 100 representatives from various counties each time in February and March, really laying out the future role of counties in line with the proposals that are in the document. And as I've already touched on, we're really looking to recruit people to those area roles on the main area companies and on the committee roles that sit within those area companies. So huge number of opportunities to get involved and really be part of those changes as they go forward. But the key part, just moving on, Isla, to the next slide, is around what we need to do this evening, which is to, in line with the resolution that was passed in September, the first sort of key governance change is to change the England hockey articles. And what you will find in those changes are a number of things. Now, there are some things which go beyond just governance changes, but they largely relate to practical common sense in the circumstances. So allowing the England hockey articles to allow this meeting to be held online in future and to fully hold electronic voting. So one of the issues you'll be aware is you had to vote for the vice president and the non-executive director roles by post, because that's what our article said prior to tonight, whereas in future we'll be able to do that electronically. Making changes to the membership policy, just clarifying who can actually be a member of England hockey through our member subscription process, which is known as affiliation, but it's actually a membership subscription. Changes to allow for the transition from the existing regions to the new areas, and effectively who holds the responsibility to run hockey on behalf of England hockey locally. One provision to allow for a proprietary club, which is something we're considering for officiating and consulting on within the officiating community. We think that's a really good way to create a sort of national club for officials that everyone can be part of, but then allow the area branches to be part of the area organisations. That's an innovation we've been pursuing through the changes. Changing from the regions consultative committee that was set up when England hockey was formed to ensure there was sort of check and balance, if you like, over the activities of England hockey, moving to a new areas standing committee, which is much more about executing the delivery of hockey locally. And we've included better references to our commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion in the articles. So they will cover off effectively what is in those article changes. We have provided track change version of the articles to anyone who's requested, including any of the specific changes that need to be made. But that covers what happens with the articles. Just to touch on what happens next, once those article changes are made, then the board can approve the changes in transition regulations, which is a bit more of the detail, the information that doesn't go in the articles, which is something we hope to be able to do next week, once we've consulted a bit further with the area standing committee on the proposals. So that's really it from me around the governance changes. Just stress that I think on my behalf as sort of leading the project, but around the board table as well, everyone is absolutely committed to this project. They know the change it can make for the benefit of everybody in hockey, in terms of how efficient we can be running the game, how we can end up hopefully with fewer committees and more consistency, which will make everyone's lives easier at all levels, including England Hockey. So we're completely committed to these changes, and the articles very much are the next step of taking the commitments forward. So back to you, Mike. I think you can hand over to Neville.
Thanks, Rich. Just before opening the floor to questions, to probably particularly to Rich, I'd like to invite Neville Wrench, who has been a stalwart of hockey in England for a considerable length of time and is chair of the region's consultative committee. Neville has asked if he can say a few words, and so over to you, Neville, please.
I am unmuted. Okay. Thanks very much, Mike. A lot of what I was going to say has been preempted, obviously. Thank you, Royston, for those kind words. I didn't expect them, not in my script at all. The point I wanted to make, I think, is that this is an opportunity for change, which we should all embrace. England Hockey reaches its majority this year. It's 18 years old. It can go and fend for itself. And so the role of the RCC, which is the national representative body of the regional associations, really does no longer has, there's no need for it. It's been a long stop committee. It's not had any authority. It's been there to make sure that what happened in 2000 never happened again. And I'm pleased to be able to say, I think, that with the robust audit committee that we have, there is little chance that we will ever slip down that slope again. Just a couple of words about the RHAs, the Regional Hockey Associations, because they disappear with these changes. And I think it's worth remembering that they've been the backbone of English hockey for the last 120 years, both as the HA and the All England Hockey Women's Association. And then more recently, in the last 50 years, of course, the leagues have contributed significantly, the regional leagues and the county leagues, to the organisation of grassroots hockey. I think we ought to record in this meeting a debt of gratitude to all those very large number of volunteers who helped hockey grow and mature to the sport we have today. And we have changed from a sport which, when it started, was always run by volunteers to what we've heard today, 60 employees, basically funded by the public purse. One thing I am disappointed to hear, and it's scuttlebutt really, is that some of the county HAs are going to disappear. I hope they don't, because I think playing for your county and getting a county badge is something that's widely recognised everywhere, no matter what sport it is. And although counties have become something of a politician's plaything over the last 50 years, with Cleveland and Avon and a number of other places, they come and go. But I think the old counties, if we can keep them, it would be beneficial for everybody. The new phase, well, we're going to get all the benefits of modern management and the techniques of IT, which are promised to make life a lot easier. Let's hope we can enjoy a full hockey season next year. I think it probably won't be one for me, but it might be, I never know. And I would like to wish the new area committees, well, they're not, they're companies, every success. You've got a long track record behind you, a successful track record. Take it forward with energy, and give us the sport we all love back running efficiently and effectively. Thanks very much, President.
Thank you, Neville. And coming from you, wishing everybody success for the future means a lot to the people who have got the challenge of making this work and are making it work. And I echo your thanks, Neville, to the regional hockey associations who have contributed so much to hockey, and indeed to the counties. So thank you for those words, Neville. They are resonating with the people, as I say, who have to make this change and are indeed making it. So could I now throw the floor open for questions around the amendment of the England Hockey Articles of Association, please? Graham, do we?
Nothing yet, no. Nope. Right, we've got two. Claire, okay, one now. Robert Gotterbed, if I'll unmute you if you could state your organisation and ask your question.
Hi, Robert Gotterbed, Essex County Hockey Association. I'd like to know what the intention was of unfranchising the umpires associations in the Articles Association.
Rich, please. Rich, you're on mute.
Somebody was going to get caught out with that. Thanks, Bob. The governance changes and the proposals for umpiring and officiating in general made it clear that we wanted officiating to be part of the new area bodies, as well as part of a new national body for umpiring that we set out in the umpiring vision. So that's sort of what we've set out in the proposals. Some county umpiring associations who are independent of their ownership body, so their overarching body, such as county association, currently have had a vote at the AGM, but that is not all HUAs. That is some HUAs where they're not subcommittees of counties. That's something we're looking to tidy up in the future and make sure that officiating is absolutely at the heart of the national governance structures and the area governance structures. One thing we know we need to get right through this is ensuring there's the right local connection within those structures, but we have a lot of officiating bodies at the moment, and there's a strong consensus that having fewer organising bodies but more sort of security, strength in numbers, if you like, will put officiating in a better position to move forward.
Any more, Graham?
Right. No, that appears to be it. No more hands up.
In that case, then, if there are no further questions, can I have a proposer, please, to approve the changes to the England Hockey Articles?
Richard Gorham.
Thank you, Richard. And a seconder, please.
David Chard.
David, thank you. And once again, if you haven't already voted, please do so now. Item 8, any other business? In the calling notice, we did ask for any questions or AOB to be submitted in advance. We didn't have any, but in view of the time where we seem to be making good progress, I'd ask, is there any question that any member would like to ask? As I say, we do have time left, so please, if you have a question to any panel member, please raise your hand and fire away.
Question from Derry Brophy. Unmuted you if you could state your organisation and ask your question.
Good evening all, thanks very much. It's Derry from Tune Hockey Club. Got two questions really. One is we paid into competitions for this season. What's happening with those? Are they just going to be sort of forgotten about this year and that will go to next year? And the second one is with regard to standardisation of rules from next season. Sort of our ladies have a completely different set of rules and have to fill in team sheets alphabetically and numbers and everything, so our men's sections don't. Will those be coming out soon, and so that we can prepare for next season?
Rich, over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks. Good to hear from you, Derry. Yeah, two questions for me, really. So one relates to return to play and the EH Championships, which I think was what you were referring to. Can I just check that that was what you were referring to, our knockout championships for adults?
To be perfectly honest, I don't know. My treasurer said we've paid into some competitions that have all been postponed.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's probably what it is, but
Okay.
yeah,
Well, let's work on the basis of those. So yes, those competitions depend a bit on what news we get from government about return to play, particularly the travel arrangements information that we get. We then have a couple of plans from how we can resume them. We've been consulting clubs all the way along about whether they want to carry on, and the overwhelming message has been yes so far. But we will refund either if we cancel the championships or teams pull out. We will refund those fees, and it's one of the commitments we've made where activity like that doesn't happen. So we will do that. But we look out for more communication on that. For those that aren't aware who are on the call tonight, tomorrow lunchtime and tomorrow night, we're doing a sort of preparing the return sessions for returning to play. I think there's another 400 or 500 delegates signed up for that, where we're going to communicate as much as we can of what we know on return to play at the moment, and we will cover that subject in a bit more detail. Secondly, on league rules, the adult leagues group that we've got together is looking at league rules at the moment, trying to, as you identify, bring together the over 50 different sets of league rules that we have around the country at the moment into a more common framework. We'll release that to clubs when we've reached a consensus. There's a lot of agreement on some issues. There's a way to go on some other issues. There's also a dependency on the link with technology, as Nick has referenced earlier on, and how we can make sure we use technology as effectively as possible. So once we have that information, we will communicate that more widely to clubs. We did consult clubs last summer. For those that are not aware, we sent out a survey that over 350 clubs responded to around their views around league rules, and we're using that as the basis for our decision making.
Thanks, Rich. Graham?
Okay, I have a question coming through the system from John Sheath, who's asking, what is the timescale for the player registration system to be ready for use?
Rich?
That's me again, Mike. Come on, go. It's probably me. So we're working on it at the moment. We are consulting, starting with the areas and other things that we need to do. The intention is that that will be ready for the start of next season. As with any IT project, we've got to go through the various steps to get there, but we've been through an extensive requirements gathering, scoping, specification phase, procurement of vendors, and we're now in the final sort of design phase of a system that's already built. We're just finalising the last few percentage of our requirements, ensuring that we then are absolutely clear what improvements we want to make, ready then to roll out through the phases that league organisers need in terms of entries and fixture generation. But we've had a lot of support again from volunteers who've put a huge amount of time into that. And we're really grateful for those of you who know who you are for the time that you've put in to support that. We've also undergone a thorough grilling from the board about our process and our decision making, and it will be very close to the board, in the board's mind, the steps over the next few months.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks. And a question from Bronwyn Seeger. If I unmute you, if you could state your organisation and ask your question.
Bronwyn Seeger, Chair of Taunton Vale Hockey Club. I just have a question as to timescales for the dissolution of the regional associations and the introduction of the new area management structure, because clearly if we looking to plan for the next season, we've got quite tight timescales. Am I correct in that?
Yes, so a huge amount of work has already undergone on that basis. We've done a lot of work in the background. I know there are attendees from West in particular on there who are on tonight. What actually happens is the two organisations overlap for a period of time. So as soon as these regulations are passed, we can now take steps towards establishing the area companies. Once they are then established, they can start to take responsibility from the regions, and then the regions will continue with some of their responsibilities probably till the end of the summer. because there'll be issues such as the Regional Masters Tournament, which may take place this summer, particularly some of the age groups may well happen. There's player pathway activities that will continue. So there's actually an overlap between the two organisations that's part of the transition regulations and part of the article changes that we've made. So okay, that's how it's been.
Okay, thanks, Rich. And sorry, so just to follow on from that, so the expression of interest form closes on the 31st of March. What's the timescale for kind of selection of suitable candidates?
So once we have applicants, and if we suffer from a surfeit of volunteers, which hasn't always been the historical challenge, but I think the changes are definitely helping us find people who are interested in being part of the future structure, then if there are elections required, they'll be elected at the inaugural meetings of the new areas. And obviously the membership selects their representatives at the AGM, particularly the key roles, the board directors and the chairs of the new area. And that will happen at the inaugural meetings of the new areas, which will probably be in early May.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I should just add, it's very much a happy family in the areas. And if people want to get involved, there are roles and there are things that people can do as soon as they want to get used to working with the areas. It's not sort of like applying for a job. It's very much a voluntary committee where support is welcome and encouraged in all areas.
Graham, any?
Okay, a question from Charles Jackman asking, what are England Hockey doing about the 3G threat to state, school and local authority pitches? In the Northwest, we have relatively few large clubs who own their own pitches, and 3G has already produced a hockey void in Blackpool. These areas are amongst the most deprived who we are seeking to reach out to.
As chair of the capital investment panel, this is high on the agenda, I can assure you. But Rich can add a bit more detail. So, Rich, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few points I'd like to make on this, and I'll try not to bore on for too long. But we absolutely understand how important it is for the sport. I mean, the first thing I'd say is that introducing hockey doesn't have to be done on hockey specific surfaces. There's a huge amount of good work that goes on introducing hockey. The adaptations that we've made to the game through things like quick sticks in particular with the big ball make the sport much more accessible on every surface, and in particularly 3G as well. So I don't think we should see you need to be on a hockey pitch to learn to play hockey. Many people on the call didn't go on a hockey pitch until somewhere into their hockey career, I'm sure. Even I'm just about old enough to remember that. And many generations of young people who are coming to clubs, their first experience will be with our bigger ball and our adapted games. So I really think we need to just see that we can introduce the sport anywhere and really try and focus on that in terms of what we can do. There is no doubt when you get into club hockey, you want to move towards obviously playing on a more hockey specific surface. So I can talk very briefly about the things we're doing there. So firstly, we have 3 members of our facilities team. We're not the biggest governing body in the world, as everybody knows, who are at any one time have over 100 playing pitch strategies on the go around the country. And these playing pitch strategies are joint pieces of work between local authorities and other sports where the strategic need for facilities is identified. So we work on those, and in general, they do a lot to make sure the right facilities end up in the right places. The real issue we have is hockey, is we can't justify a surface being a hockey pitch if we don't play much hockey on it. And that's the really hard message here, is that to guarantee our surfaces stay hockey for a long period of time, we need to use them quite a lot. We need to develop really strong relationships with the provider of those facilities, and we need to do the work in the community to demonstrate that we're a key sort of community provider. And so we always encourage clubs to try and do that, to build longer, deeper partnerships in terms of what they do. We're also working on innovations. We have a Gen 2 surface, if people aren't aware of it, which is a netball and tennis approved hockey surface that would be very familiar to hockey players. It looks like a sundress pitch. It's something you'll find in a number of schools already, and we're really encouraging education sites to go for those. And many are choosing those over 3G surfaces because they're more versatile. And we continue to work really closely with the FA on a case-by-case basis. Where our difficulty arises is where decisions are made outside of the strategic planning framework locally, where individual schools or chains of schools, or we've seen recently in Hawley, make decisions outside of any strategic need from a local authority or anyone else, or where unfortunately organisations go under because they're not financially viable, as has been the case for one or two leisure centres. So together, though, we need to justify hockey pitches by using them intensely enough and really building deeper partnerships with people. We have a good relationship with the FA, and we escalate matters where we need to, and in general, they support us. So we really fall out over very few sites. But we're not going to have pitches that remain hockey pitches if they're not used for hockey. That's a reality.
Thanks, Rich. Graham?
I have a question from Anthony Walker. Will the new registration and competition management system simplify or replace the current EH club affiliation system?
Rich?
Yes, we sincerely hope so. So we sincerely hope so. The aim will, it will give us lots of information that we have to collect for affiliation, which should make the process easier for clubs.
Graham?
Okay, a question from Patrick Hunt. If organisations are being dissolved or disbanded and replaced, what happens to the accumulated cash?
Rich?
Do you want me to go again?
Yeah.
Okay. So the accumulated funds of any organisation are obviously the responsibility of that organisation and the membership of that organisation, and their dissolution clauses within their articles will determine what options are available to those organisations. From an England hockey perspective, the intent has never been, through the governance changes, for those reserves to come to England hockey. They've been for them to be used for the perpetuation of activity within the sport. You know, we feel very strongly that two things really, that the membership get a fair and well communicated say on the reserves of those organisations, so that good governance processes are followed by organisations, and that the membership get a proper chance to consider and vote on what they would like to see to happen to those reserves. Practically, in our view, that is normally one of two things. It's to go to the appropriate successor organisation who is taking on responsibilities from the organisation that will no longer be there, or to go back to the membership. The second one of those can be logistically quite complicated, depending on the number of members and how those reserves have been accumulated over time. But that is something that is well within the rights of those organisations to consider. Mike, I don't know if there's anything to add as you've been party to those discussions.
Yes, I would like to add that, Rich. As Rich has said, the monies that sit in the various organisations belong to those organisations. And the only thing I would add is that if members have an interest in what happens to those monies going forward, then please, in the same way that 270 people have got engaged in this particular meeting at an AGM, if there is a meeting at which the future of those funds is to be decided, please get involved and have your say, so that following whatever decision is taken by those organisations, the membership have had a say, and they go to the place that the membership want those funds to go to. So I'd just like to add that little point. Graham, any more?
Okay. Yep, we have Blake Gilchrist. If I unmute you, if you can just...
Hi, yes. Hi, Blake Gilchrist from Alkinstonians. Just a follow-up question to Rich in support of our colleagues at Hawley Hockey Club, who are obviously facing a specific set of circumstances with regards to proposed changes to their pitches. We understand the points you just made, but what specific help is being offered to clubs like that, which are facing a kind of wide set of combined circumstances in regards to their hockey pitch provision?
Yeah, I mean, that's where our facilities team come in that I referenced earlier. In this case, Joe Hawley, who's our relationship manager who covers that area, is working very closely with the club, and in some of the club communications, it's ironic really, it's Joe Hawley and it's Hawley Hockey Club, but she is working really closely with the club and providing what support she can, dealing with the senior leadership of the school, dealing with the local authority, dealing with Sport England to make the case as best we can. The reality is, for all the work we can do, the club making a massive noise is extremely helpful as well, particularly to local politicians. I always say to clubs that one of the best things you can ever do is get to know your local politician in advance of issues like this occurring, because politicians do influence decisions like this. But we're working extremely closely with them, as we do in other circumstances. Largely, we win more than people recognise. We don't publicise that because it isn't always the thing to do. We don't win them all, but we do an awful lot behind the scenes to support the clubs. And I hope, if Hawley are on, I hope they can support that point for Jo's support that she's given.
Yeah, thank you, Rich, for that response. And I would just add that I think it's really important that all clubs kind of get behind other clubs which are facing similar challenges, sign petitions, get involved with local politicians. I think it's up to all of us to contribute to making those things happen. But thank you, Rich.
Absolutely endorse that. Thank you.
I'm conscious, gents, ladies and gents, that we've sort of been going for an hour and 20 minutes, and I just wonder whether now is the time to maybe wrap up. If anybody has further questions that they'd like to ask, then can they submit them to the email agm@englandhockey.co.uk, and we will absolutely get back to you on those questions. So at this point, I'd like to close the meeting. I'd like to thank all the club's delegates who've attended the meeting. I do believe, as Royston said, this is the way to go. It would be nice to have 250 people in Bisham. Might cause a bit of a logistical problem, but in the absence of that, this is a good way to communicate, I believe. I'd like to thank the panel for attending. A fair amount of preparation goes into this, and I'd like to thank Graham and behind the scenes Isla and Helen Clark for their help in putting this together. So with that, as I say, if anybody has further questions, please submit them to agm@englandhockey.co.uk. In the meantime, I thank everybody for attending. I wish you a safe journey home, and I look forward to seeing you either in person or via this medium this time next year. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.